as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
Oh, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Welcome. Hello. Happy Sunday. Happy August to you. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. We are, of course, live on Facebook, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we are, 100 and the Michael Frolik of subscribers, just 2 away from Sean and Devin's favorite number. Leave that to them. You can also subscribe to the audio shortly after this as well. We are the No Days Off podcast. We're not 31 Thoughts where we take a break here. We keep going. Tyler, Chris, right? Sean and Devin, we are still here because we know that there are things still to talk about.
Yeah, if there's hockey to talk about, Devin and I will find a way to talk about it. So might as well do it on here.
Exactly. Yes. Might as well invite all of us. How are you doing?
Good. Yesterday, I went to the Stampeders and Argonauts game at McMahon Stadium. First live sporting event in way too long. And it was amazing. I had so much fun. It was awesome to feel that electric energy that you get at live sporting events, and being able to yell and scream, and maybe they might actually hear me this time. Types when you're at the game was fantastic, and I'm still on a bit of an emotional high from that.
Did what was the crowd last night?
I believe it was around 65% of McMahon Stadium, so just over 20,000.
Okay. And is it full capacity there, or?
Yeah, there was no restrictions on anything in terms of that. So there was people wearing masks in the underneath the stands when you're going to go to the concessions. There's people wearing masks in the stands if they wanted to, but there was no requirement for limited capacity or anything like that.
We are the Hockey Podcast, so, for us to talk about CFL makes complete sense, but I'm just going to warn you, we're going to be going on tangents for a lot today anyway. So, but I'm glad that for this week of the CFL, I'm glad it's back. And I'm glad that they got, they started in the right spots. They started in their hot spots. Winnipeg, of course, that's the right place to start. Saskatchewan, they're always going to be full. Calgary is a good football town, despite what some people say. It is a good CFL town. The issue in Calgary isn't that people don't want to go. The issue is where that stadium is terrible. Like it's flat out awful. Like,
how dare you? I love that stadium.
It's a great historical piece, but is it a place? It's in the winter. Do you want to go there? And then Edmonton. That was a special night as well. They honored. I thought it was nice they honored Joey Moss. It is weird to not see the EE on the logo. It's very weird.
But those helmets are pretty good. The antlers on the helmets are pretty good. I will say that. I will give any team from Edmonton all the shit in the world. Just ask Graham Moseman. But those helmets do look sharp, and they do look really good.
Yeah. So I mean, it's I think there was a lot of worry how the CFL after a year and a bit of no action. I think it's a good start. So good, and I mean, yeah,
got a couple unpredictable games that you normally get with no lead is safe type deal that you get with the CFL. So that was always good. That was good. Unfortunately, the Stamps lost, but it was still a fun game, and that team, the Stamps, look like they're a team that's going to be fun to watch for the season.
Devin, of course, loves football. It's one of his favorite sports. Like you just look at his eyes. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Hey, I'm supposed to swear first. The dump, as we call it here in Calgary, which is the McMahon Stadium. It is very nostalgic. It's kind of like the Saddle Dome. It's one of those ones where you love going to it, but definitely it's hard to compare because we really don't have much else to compare it to relatively, unless you're going to, let's say, the Rogers Place. Am I right with that? Rogers Place up in Edmonton? Or is that
for the football stadium?
Football, it's the Brickfield Commonwealth.
I'm just talking about just arenas, facilities in general, because you have a brand new one for the Edmonton Oilers up there in Edmonton.
Rogers Place, yeah.
Rogers Place, yep. And then even Rogers Arena, I think is better than the Saddle Dome as far as obviously it's way newer. But you do have the nostalgia within going to the to McMahon Stadium, because I do love that stadium for what it is. But is it terrible? Absolutely.
Yeah. But other than that, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's I was just commenting to Sean. For some reason, we always talk about the weather. And the weather here today is 15, 16 degrees now. I thrive at this temperature. I took Gord for a walk this morning, and I was in shorts and a t-shirt, and I felt so comfortable. I run hot all the time. I'm just a little furnace, and I'm happy that it's like this, but at the same time, it's got to enjoy the nice weather that we're going to have this week coming forward here, because we know that it's slowly going to get cooler, and September's going to come. But you know what September means? It's hockey time, baby.
Yes. Just before we get into hockey, we got rain yesterday here, which I think was so needed. Especially for the wildfires out here that are not only north and east of us, but also south of us as well in Washington. So, much needed for everybody.
I can actually see downtown Calgary from my place, and haven't been able to see that in a couple of weeks because of all the smoke from all those fires. So, it's hope. Because we had our uncle got an evacuation notice from his farm out by Chase, BC. So he had to evacuate all his animals yesterday, the last couple of days. And then we've got, let alone, is Vernon that is on full on evacuation notice, the whole city of Vernon. It's scary. My heart, my thoughts go out to anyone and everyone who has been affected by all these fires.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Let's move into the hockey, though, because that's what we are called. We are called the Hockey Podcast. And we'll start. We're gonna get the crap out of the way because and just quickly move on here from it. But we do have to talk about it. It's one of these situations where we have to talk about it. It's not great, but I will just read. Kevin Epp got himself back into the news in Canuck media, putting this statement out on Twitter regarding Jake Virtanen. And I'll just read it. Following the anonymous social post, a lawsuit was started seeking to recover money from Jake. That was before the complainant, to my understanding, even spoke with the police. In fact, a media spokesman from the Vancouver Police Department indicated on May 5th that the police had reached out to the complainant rather than the other way around, having learned about the allegations through media coverage. For what I've been told about the process, all of this is highly unusual. According to the situation having brought her civil lawsuit seeking money, someone leaked documents to media on 2 different occasions. Both counts are in direct violation of a court sealing order. We have asked certain members of the media whether it was the complainant who leaked information about the case, but the media have declined to indicate their source. The reporters were almost certainly unaware of the court sealing order. While Jake has respectfully adhered to court orders restricting the release of information, the allegations that have been put forward anonymously have made their way out to the media quite deliberately. Those anonymous allegations have had far-reaching consequences for Jake, his family, and potentially for his career. And as this case gets addressed through the police, the investigation and civil court process, this could be determined as an attempt to destroy the person's reputation in the press before ordinary processes could run their course, or an attempt to obtain financial compensation from a high-profile athlete. But what has happened so far puts Jake in a difficult position. As he adheres to and cooperates with the Vancouver police investigation, he is restricted by the court sealing order, which he continues to respect. It's important to emphasize that Jake has not been charged with any crime. As things stand, he is under investigation, and an investigation is entirely appropriate where this sort of serious allegation is put forward. The only case that has made its way into the court system is a civil lawsuit seeking payment of money from Jake, which he is responding to. There has been no criminal charges against Jake. Jake is looking forward to putting this matter to the rest and focusing on his career to continue to play the game he loves. It's an overall pretty. I don't know what else to say, but it is, Jake Virtanen is a former Canuck bought out this year. He's still going to have an impact in the Canuck community, and also for those. He's a former Hitman as well, so I think there's probably a lot of Calgary eyes that will be on him as well. It's just a really not a good situation at all, and quite frankly, a very terrible write-up here from Kevin App. I don't know any other way to say it, but this is, if I am the person that has brought forth the accusation, I would be deeply offended by this. This is garbage. This is sorry, Devin, I'm going to swear twice before you even get to swear. This is shit.
Yeah. I can't really add much to what after that there, Kev. It's disheartening. It's crappy. It's shitty. I'm so glad that the Canucks are done with him, with Jake Virtanen, and I'm ready to move on. And but I do want to make sure that we get that the people who have brought forth these accusations are supported properly, because we need to make sure that we do that. So I'm just so happy that the Canucks as an organization have moved on from Jake Virtanen.
Yeah, it's a distraction that the Vancouver Canucks do not need. But it's all about innocent until proven guilty in my mind. I'm not obviously saying anything against the woman involved. Obviously, they've come up for a reason, and yeah, it's just a situation that, like I said, the Canucks are probably happy to be rid of.
Yep. But there was other news this week, and I think the big news this week is, we'll start with the big news, and then we'll get on here. And no, it was not the Jack Eichel trade, because the Jack Eichel trade hasn't happened. However, the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland signed Darnell Nurse to an 8-year, $9.25 a year cap hit on this week. There was a talk of an extension going on for some time, and they finally got that done. And man, Twitter just loves Ken Holland right now. Twitter and Ken Holland are just like this, going together like glue. But I guess maybe we'll start with Sean on this. What do you think of this contract?
It's too long. An 8-year deal. It should, for me, you do not sign players to 8-year deals if they're in their late 20s, because you're signing these players into their mid 30s when all the information out there is that once you hit like 32, 33, you're starting to, let alone 30, like it's usually about 30s, you start to see some decline. But it really starts at 32, 33. And Darnell Nurse is this contract, not only you have to remember this contract isn't for this upcoming season. He still has one more year on his current deal. This one doesn't start until 22, 23. So this doesn't start until he's 28. And you're signing him through till he's 36. And he plays a physical game, a tough game on the body. I think it's too long. I think he could have gotten a better deal in a 4 to 6 year deal that would have made a lot more sense. But I think other than that, I think you look at what these contracts that were signed this year. If you're a top number one defenseman on your team and is in sort of that middle to upper level amongst all your peers in that same position, you're getting a lot of money. Because you look at Rorinsky, Hamilton, McCarr, Jones, Heiskanen, all signed big money deals for long term. But for me, I just look at the age. I look at with all that. I think it's just too long. I think it should have been a 4 to 6 year deal. Would have been fine. But I think there's going to be a chance that the latter half of that deal is going to look absolutely horrendous, and they're going to have to find a way to get rid of it, because it's just, yeah. But they needed to get him locked up, because he's the key piece to that blue line.
In comparison, so for those of you who don't know, Zach Rorinsky, he got a contract extension for exact same term, I believe, right? It's been 8 years for him.
Rorinsky is a 6-year deal.
6-year deal. Okay, well, he's getting a little bit more at 9.5, just a shade over 9.5. Darnell, he's at like Kev said, 9.25, and Dougie Hamilton is a straight up $9 million. So that's kind of the ballpark of similar players, defensive number one pairing defenseman. I guess the difference between Rorinsky and Hamilton to Darnell Nurse is Darnell Nurse doesn't put up points. He is I'd say 3/4 defensive defenseman. He does have an upside if he really wants to. I think he has a good shot, and you know what? I personally don't think it's that bad of a deal overall. He turns 27 in February, so not quite 28 there. So once his so right now he's 26, 27 when the deal starts, beginning of not this coming year but the year after, and I just think that he will be okay until actually his no movement clause comes in, which is the last 3 years, and the clause is the player to submit a 10-team trade list. So overall, I don't think it's a bad signing. It's a good calculated risk on Holland's part, and you know what? It kind of shows how important he is to that blue line and how important he is in the locker room, even just outside the game. He's a leader. I think that if Connor McDavid wasn't there, I think that he would be captain. And I really like this player. I think he's strong, gritty, and he doesn't take no shit from no one. So I really don't mind it at all. Yeah, it's probably maybe a bit too expensive, and yeah, a year or maybe 2 to 3 years too long. But like I said, there is a no movement clause within that they could potentially use going forward once that 3 years the last 3 years of his deal. I'm rambling on my words. So yeah, I don't know, Kev, what do you think?
Well, it is an overpay. Like, I do think this is an overpay, but at the same time, it seemed to be the going rate for extensions of defensemen. Now, I mean, I guess this is, I guess, where the question is, and you know, I think it's funny because, if this was signed in, and I know this is just a general comment, and I'm not picking on Canucks media, but I'm just going to just make this observation. If Jim Benning signed this deal with Darnell Nurse with the Canucks, there would be a lot of Canucks media that would be like, this is nuts. This is an overpay. It's too long. I think that they would generally be agreeing with Sean. Oilers media is defending this, is more as seems on Devin's side, is like, you look at the numbers, you look at where Darnell Nurse is, you look at how he's contributed. This is a fair deal compared to what other defensemen are getting. So I guess where I think this comes down to where you sit, where Darnell Nurse is in the trajectory of the National Hockey League. And on the left side, how many places is he not the top pairing left D in this league? My instant answers: Tampa, Hedman, Carolina, Slavin, for sure.
Slavin's good comparable to him in the type of player he is.
Oh, I know you love Darnell Nurse, Devin. I know you do, but I would take Jacob Slavin in a heartbeat.
Sorry, my point within that is just that they're comparable players with the way that they play.
Slavin, not as many penalty minutes, but I hear what you're saying. Vancouver, that's an interesting debate. I think that there's a fair that we're bringing this up in the sense of Quinn Hughes and needing a contract. It's hard for. I think he's a good defenseman. I think he has the potential to be a better defenseman. But I guess there's also the legitimate, the legitimate question is, after this season that he was in the North, what is next year going to be like? I do like Darnell Nurse. I really do. But I do think that this is an overpay, but there is another level to this. So maybe I'll let you guys respond to where's Darnell. Okay. If Darnell Nurse was in Calgary, is he the number one left side D? Is it Nurse or Hannafin?
Okay. It's Nurse, and it's not even close.
Okay.
But before we talk about that, when you're talking about $9 million, it shouldn't matter what side that player plays on. When you're talking about $9 million, that guy has to be your number one defenseman, regardless of side that he plays.
Okay, so and then from that perspective, how many places is Darnell Nurse the number one defenseman in the NHL? Take away left or right.
I have him as an average number one defenseman in the NHL. I have him sort of it's in that I'm sure once you get in, there's probably like a top 10 that I think are going to be better than him. And then you look at, and then there's a big mashup of the rest of them that he fits into, in my opinion. So I think he's an average number one defenseman in the NHL. I like the game that Darnell Nurse plays. I like what he brings. Like I said, my thing is just the term. And for me, an 8-year deal should be you shouldn't be signing someone to an 8-year deal if they're over 25. But that's just me. I understand why they did it. I understand what their thought process is. I disagree with it, but I can see where they're coming from. And this will lead into where you're going to go with it, Kev, is that there are extenuating factors that are going to bump up the price for Darnell Nurse's contract being in Edmonton.
Yeah. Listen, to Kevin's first question about Gordon. Sorry.
What Gordon is actually saying is the contract is too long and it's an overpay as well.
She's upset about it, obviously.
Yeah, she's very upset.
Yeah, sorry. I whenever she does that, it's kind of funny. If as far as yes, he would be the number one defenseman above Tanev in Calgary. How about in Winnipeg, Josh Morrissey? Absolutely yes. How about in Ottawa, Thomas Chabot? Yes. And I would even argue.
Wait. Hold on. Just before you go to Toronto, did you just say that Darnell Nurse was better than Thomas Chabot?
Thomas Chabot still, his upside is higher than Nurse in my mind. As of right now, he doesn't have the supporting pieces. This is my whole argument about Thomas Chabot. If he was on a different team, I feel like he would have more of a leash to go on the offense. He has more offensive upside in my mind than Darnell Nurse does. And I think at his peak of his career, he will be better than Darnell Nurse. They're not quite the same player. Chabot doesn't have as big of a mean streak as Darnell Nurse does, but I understand why you asked that, because I'm very high on Chabot. I love Chabot. But to go on with my point, I think there's an argument there that he once again, they're not similar players, but in Toronto, you have Morgan Riley. It'd be a toss-up for me for those two type of players, and that is the type of player that I think would fit very well within that blue line in Toronto with Jake Muzzin as well, who are very gritty players. But anyways, just going through the north there, and in Montreal, you're looking at either a Petrie or a Shea Weber, and once again, different players, but I would argue that it's probably 50-50 for me for Petrie. No offense to Shea Weber, but he's obviously might not even play next year because of his injuries. But if we're comparing Nurse to Petrie, I think that there's a decent comparable between them. But I think I would take Nurse just because he's a bit younger, and the type of game that he does play is very coveted and would thrive in any division of the NHL. So you know what, I don't see it as that. I guess what I'm trying to get at, is you have a bunch of different potential number ones that are in this league, and he is a good number one defenseman within this league. And $9 million is a lot, but I think you're paying for more than just his on ice value.
I'm just curious. What about Hughes? What about in Vancouver?
As of right now, I would take a player, just player comparison side by side. I would take Nurse because he has a bigger track record. As of right now, yes, Hughes, his upside is definitely it's up there for sure. But as of right now, Hughes, he had an off year last year. His first year in the NHL was phenomenal. Just whether or not he can get back up to his potential. That's the only question. You know what you're getting game in and game out with Darnell Nurse. He's playing on average. He's playing 25. He played just over 25 minutes a night on average last year. And the years before, it was 23 and 22. The amount of stress and the amount of reliability that Edmonton has for him is huge, and that cannot be overstated. Quinn Hughes, his defensive play is questionable, and it will get better. I don't doubt it, but it's like, okay, well, what would you rather have, an offensive defenseman or defensive defenseman? And that's what he's getting paid for, is to being that shutdown role guy who they can rely on. And he does have a little bit more upside, I think, than what his numbers show. It's just, once again, what was he surrounded by in Edmonton? There's nothing crazy as far as, he'll have Duncan Keith that will help him with his minutes. But you did lose an Adam Larson, which is a massive loss for them too. So I just feel like he has to compensate, and his game has developed to compensate for the lack of support in Edmonton.
So the visual criticism of this, especially when you look at the Oilers' defense, and I'm getting to my point, but I'm going to go the long way there, is 2022, 2023. As of right now, you got Nurse at 9.2. You got Duncan Keith at 5.5. You've got Tyson Berry at 4.5. You got Cody
Gross.
Ceci at 3.25.
Gross.
And you also have Oscar Klefbom, who you probably are putting on LTIR, but he's at 4.1. So you total that up. That is 14, 18, 21. They have, unless they get a deal with Legason and they bring in another for 22, 23, they are at $27.5 million on paid on defense. I'm like, so, but here is the issue. Like, I wonder, we've had this I mean, I don't think that people are talking enough about how the strain is in the bit of the disadvantage that Canadian teams are. I don't know if I'm even using the right word, so someone may correct me, but it's not necessarily a level playing field when you're signing a player in Canada as opposed to the States, depending on the state. And now you are not paying state taxes. I mean, in Alberta, I mean, there's no provincial sales tax, but you're still paying taxes. There's more of, depending on the player, some players thrive in a Canadian market. Some players need to get away from a Canadian market and then come back into a Canadian market. And so I wonder if we have to grade some of these signings in Canada with a little bit of a bended curve, because this is 9.2, but is this really more, and 2 more years, but is this really more Zach Rorinsky 9.5 at 6? Like, do we need to grade this at a bit of a curve, or is it like, do we need to keep this at the straight line that we've always had?
You have to look at all the different details and factors and put that into your situation. You can't just draw a straight line between Rorinsky and Nurse. I think that the two deals that I would look at this deal and compare it to with more of a straight line based off of age and role and everything is Dougie Hamilton and Seth Jones. Those two deals, they're around this. All three of them are around the same age. You're buying out if all of them are all three of those deals there's no RFA years in those deals. So you have to remember that too when talking about a lot of these deals, especially with players of RFA age. The price to buy out a UFA year versus an RFA year is significant in difference. And more expensive for the UFA. Now, but and then you throw in the Canadian the Canadian quote unquote tax, the Edmonton quote unquote tax that adds to the price of a contract for Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Winnipeg. You have to throw that in there. As I said, I don't. My issue is the term, and that's a philosophical thing that, for me, when I look at age, how players tend to age, that's me. But in terms of the cap hit, when you compare it to what was signed, it's within the ballpark. Yeah, you would. I would pay Dougie Hamilton more. Yeah, I would pay Miro Heiskanen and Zach Rorinsky more, let alone Cale Makar more. But they also, a lot of those guys have Heiskanen plays in Dallas, where Texas does not have state income tax, and Makar is on a team that's looking to be a cup contender for years to come. And you have to balance it out and understand that. And I think there's a lot of times where you look at some of these lower end of the roster signings, and that's where you end up overpaying, and that's where it bites you in the butt more often than not. So I think having that extra $1 million on a Darnell Nurse, it's not that for a cap hit. It's nothing that should be yelled and screamed about.
There definitely is a difference between signing, let's say, in Vegas, Dallas, or Florida, because yes, like Sean said, the income tax isn't there, but you do have to pay more for depending on where where that player wants to be, and if they want to be either quote unquote close to home, like Duncan Keith. And I know he's not signed there, but he got traded here for that reason. You do have to pay more for those type of players to be here in Canada, and that's the detriment of it. Like that's the reality of it, and you can't really go against it. It's just that it is what it is, and yeah, you're gonna have to overpay for potential players. Like I said, I think Blake Coleman, he definitely got overpaid and got an extra year or two out of it as well, especially at that age. So it's just one of those things that has to happen. But where is your team? What trajectory is your team on in the grand scheme of things for success? And you got to weigh the pros and cons within that. And it sounds, if you look at the Troy Brouwer deal, that's exactly what it was. Brad Treliving wanted a cup winner, a guy who's good in the room, and a guy that will be a leader within that room as well. And obviously it didn't work out. Obviously that was a massive mistake on Treliving's part with that signing, but he made a calculated risk and it didn't pay off. Just like Jim Benning is making a calculated risk, bringing in OEL at his age, at his cap hit, but he also had a bit of Tyler, you're missing out, a sweetener within getting a Connor Garland as well. So whether or not you're signing or trading within to come to Canada by request or by just a sheer circumstance, then you have to pay a little bit more for that player to be a part of a Canadian team.
To me, I'm not as critical about this Nurse deal. I think that I'm more than willing to rate that curve, but I got to tell you, 4.5 to Tyson Barrie and 3.25 to Cody Ceci, just that right side of that defense, just I know Cody Ceci seemed to play well in Pittsburgh last year, but most people that have seen Cody Ceci, aren't really convinced. I just, that right side of that defense, if I'm an Oilers fan, it's giving me shivers. You better hope for the love of God that Evan Bouchard grows into that position a lot quicker than yeah.
Man,
Carl agrees with me. Carl
Absolutely.
the Cat agrees with me.
Carl's pissed about Cody Ceci as well. He's talk about somebody who's watched Cody Ceci. Think about it last year. Last year he was a last-minute signing by Pittsburgh for $1 million. Now he has a 4-year deal at what, 3.2?
3.25.
Oh my God! If you're a fan of the Edmonton Oilers, that is a cringy signing. But as far as this podcast is concerned, sorry, Graham, it's one of those ones where it's kind of like, yes, you're paying a mediocre bottom 6 defenseman to do what? To be a shutdown guy? Yeah, his analytics were good last year, but look at the team he was on. That has to be in consideration. And look what team you're going to. 2-man show in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They talk about an overpay. If anybody should be upset, it's about that deal, not the Darnell Nurse deal.
Yeah.
That or the Zach Hyman deal.
It's a bit different, though.
It's the Hyman one's the same thing. It's 2-3 years too long. But again, that might have been what they needed to get it done. And goes Absolutely. Back to the point that Kevin's trying to make is there is if you're in those markets to get some of these players, you may have to overpay by a year or two and some extra cap. And To me, it looks like they had to do it with Hyman. It looks like they had to do it with Cody Ceci. It looks like they had to do it with Tyson Barrie, and I think it's going to be detrimental for them down the line. They are going to put Clefbaum on LTIR this year, so they are going to open up the cap space. They need to sign Kyle Yamamoto. Guess what? He still needs to be signed for this year. And he's one of those younger players that they need to get locked up into a nice deal. And they're going to have to underpay him for a couple years because they don't have the room, let alone if Jesse Puljujarvi has a season like he did last year, he's going to get paid decent next year, and he's got ARP rights.
See, and with Hyman though, I feel like that's one of the signings that once again, to Kevin's point, it was an overpay, absolutely. I think the money was kind of spot on, maybe 0.5 million more than what he probably should have gotten. But yeah, it's a term. But you have to show Connor McDavid. It comes back to you have to show him that you're actually doing something. You have to show him that you're moving in the right direction so that he has a chance to win a cup, or the team has a chance to be.
lead you to a Stanley Cup?
That's my next point. Cody Ceci, that is a ridiculous, stupid overpay. That is something that is not a good calculated risk. Zach Hyman, Blake Coleman, that's a calculated risk that you have to make, and you have to fork out the dough for it. Because if you're not doing that, if you're not showing your fan base, if you're not showing your top end players, this is all speculation for Connor McDavid, but we've had this conversation multiple times for the past year and a half. When does Connor want out? Does he want out? Is there a timeline within that? I think it's showing next year. And if there's nothing shown next year and next offseason that they are making a step forward, it's stupid. And he won't want to stay. And signing Cody Ceci within that cap hit for that many years, that handcuffs you massively to make bigger trades, better trades. And talk about you have a good up and coming blue line within having Broberg and having Evan Bouchard. Like why would you have to do that while bringing in Cody Ceci for that term? Like that is absolutely stupid on Ken Holland's part.
Well, a couple of things here. McDavid is UFA at 26-27, and I know that is 5 years away. But you're looking just down the line. You've got at 26-27, you've already got 3 players at contract. Nugent Hopkins is at 5.1, Hyman 5.5, Nurse at 9.25. You have Draisaitl that will be unrestricted in 25-26. Both of those guys are not going to be making less money than they are now. That creates another very interesting dilemma with the Oilers, because if I'm being ridiculous here, tell me I'm being ridiculous. But at the way things are going now, like in terms of wages, if you're McDavid at 26-27, you're at that point 20, okay, let me see, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. You can make, it depends on where everything is with the CBA salary cap, but do you see him an Oiler for life?
Oh. The only way he's an Oiler for life is if they win 2-3 cups.
Yeah.
If they're in the same spot as they're now and they're underachieving and they haven't even made a run, he's out. He's gone. They would have traded him two years from now, because he's going to want to get to a place where he feels like they can do it. And I think that's part of the issue, is like there's no flexibility to make changes here with the long-term contracts that they've signed. Whether you've got 4 years left with Draisaitl, you've got 5 years left with McDavid, you just signed Zach Hyman to a 7-year deal. Nugent Hopkins is an 8-year deal. And now Darnell Nurse on an 8-year deal that starts next year. So you still have him locked in for 9 years at a very significant cap hit. And then with Barry and Cece signed for 3 and 4 year deals, respectively, let alone you've got Fogle and Cassian signed for 3 years. You've got a lot of cap space locked up in spots where you're not, I don't know if there's enough flexibility for them to, if say it doesn't go well this year, what do they do? Because they've got Archibald and Turris coming off the books, but yes, Puljujärvi needs a new deal. Ryan McLeod's going to need a new deal, see depending on how he does. William Lagesson is someone I think they're quite high on as a sort of someone who could be a top 4 defenseman for them, like a second pair D-man. And they've got, and he's going to need a deal, needs an art breaks. They need to figure out their goaltending situation.
Yeah.
Like they've got Mike Smith signed for 2.2 for the next 2 years. Guess what? He retires. That stays on.
Sean, he's not retiring. No, he's going to play the goaltender for the rest of the century. What they're going to clone Mike Smith and just keep having him in there. And besides, McDavid will score enough goals. They'll just pull the goalie. It's fine. It's good.
But and they got Koskinen coming off the books. That's going to help. But again, you're still going to need to find a goaltender because I just look at that and I don't like the lack of flexibility that they have cap wise to make moves to be able to put a team together that can maybe, if it doesn't work out, because you've locked in long term on way too many players and way too and then there's a couple that are very, very questionable.
And this kind of comes into it. I don't know in what capacity, but after this year, Connor McDavid has a full no move clause as well. So you can't trade him anywhere you want to trade him after this coming season. So that, I mean, I'm not saying that Ken Holland has to trade McDavid right away to try and get something from him, but that does have an impact on what happens with him moving forward if he gets traded, if he's moved. And there's probably a lot of people out there listening that are just rolling their eyes that might be Edmonton Oilers fans thinking he's not going anywhere. I don't know. I really don't know. How are you managing that asset when he wants out and he says he doesn't want to go to Team X because he doesn't want to go to Arizona, but Arizona is giving the world to get him to come in, within a hypothetical world. So it really Ken Holland is doing Ken Holland things and handcuffing himself. Just look at Detroit with the applicator contract. That was a big one. That was long term for a guy who was at the time, I believe he was 28, maybe even 29, and he got a big extension. I forget what it was. I believe it was around $5 to $6 million for, I think it was 6 or 7 years. And that's just what Ken Holland does.
$4.25 million for 7 years.
7 years. And at that time, 4.25 was a big pay grade jump for applicator, and it really didn't make much sense. There's a lot of people raising eyebrows and questioning why he did that. So it's to me, once again, it's just Ken Holland doing Ken Holland things.
Yeah, it is an interesting. I mean, again, some people may think that we're being ridiculous bringing up that. I'm not saying McDavid is asked out for a trade, but you have to start thinking about. You got to start thinking about this a little bit when you're in a flat cap and you just don't know what's next and what you're paying here. Which just to go on another tangent. I mean, if Heidi was here, tangents would be all over the place. But Mr. Brad Treliving, an offer sheet. Mr. Kyler Yamamoto should be a guy someone is tossing an offer sheet at.
Yeah.
I mean, right shot guy. He's got some upside that he hasn't fully achieved. It'd be a very risky one, but I think that those are the type of guys that you should be looking at if you're trying to swing for the fences. I wouldn't. I think that's because he's put up 11 goals in 27 games in 1920, which everyone's like, oh, good, there we go. There's the winger for McDavid and Draisaitl. But he only put up 8 goals in the 52 games that he played this year. So he's still young. He still needs to figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that should be looked at. I'm not outside of the Eichel stuff right now. I'm not expecting anything big. I think it's all sort of shuffling deck chairs at this point, trying to make the big news will be RFA signing with their current teams. That's in the next 2-3 weeks, I think, because I think you look at where Buffalo's at, and I think they're not going to break. They've got their heels dug in. They're not going to. If there's any news that comes out of it, it's Buffalo finally going, fine, go get the disc replacement surgery. And then once that happens, that could open up could open up things. But until Buffalo comes off either of those ledges that they seem to be on right now, whether it's not the price for Eichel and the not allowing him to get the disc replacement surgery, nothing's going to happen there. We've seen how many, like, what the last offer sheet we saw was Sebastian Aho, and it wasn't really enough. Like, it was one of those ones where you were squinting and kind of hoping that they would that Carolina's numbers team wouldn't like it, and they would let them go to Montreal, but no, they matched it. Like, I don't see anything happening, unfortunately.
Well, it's all about, you talk about shuffling deck chairs, but it's a calculated risk, right? That if you get that player for an offer sheet, then you'll get a good player or like a good prospect for potentially nothing. And talk about offer sheets, Kev, you brought this up more than once. Oliver Shillington here in Calgary, that makes a lot of sense to me, because if you're offering a certain amount, which is very little, like a 1.5. I don't know where that ceiling is for the offer sheet. Sean knows.
1.5 is costs a third round pick.
A third round pick for a good potential, 7'6" defenseman that he's still young, who can skate very well. Obviously, there's something with a disconnect between the Calgary Flames and Oliver Shillington camp, where he can't crack the lineup. But if you are Brad Treliving and you get an offer sheet for Oliver Shillington, it definitely would be questionable to match it, considering the depth within your organization, who's coming up if there's going to be injury, and there probably will be an injury. I mean, we do have Chris Tanev on the team. He's going to get injured. If not, he'll be playing. Not 100%.
Can you imagine my Twitters when my tweets will blow up when Chris Tanev gets injured? Thanks a lot, Devin.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I would not put him in an Eichel trade, and he got injured. Look at
So when you look at that, you get a third round pick. You're getting an asset, and not even doing it for a trade, but for an offer sheet. Hey, that's something to look at.
If I'm a team, I'm not even offering that much. I'm offering less than 1.2.
Well, exactly.
Forcing Calgary to make either they have to pay him that much money, because I believe that's what it is. Let me just quickly double check. 1.3, just 1.3 and change and under, no compensation.
Exactly.
So literally, if you're a team that is looking for a younger defenseman who could probably play a 6-7 role, who has potential to be more, and you look at Calgary, and does Calgary want to pay him that much? And you force their hand to either lose him for nothing or pay him more than they want to.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me just look at something, because I mean, you're gonna still have to. I mean, you still have a heck of a lot of work to do. I mean, I don't think Shillington impacts what happens with Tkachuk. I don't think that's the same. But but looking at the defense going forward, I mean, you gotta save your money because you're bringing Michael Stone back, because in some ways Michael Stone always comes back. You actually need to sign. You still have Zadorov to sign. You've got Connor Mackey to sign too, and Valimaki's 10.2, so you need to give him something. So, I mean, the only three that they have that are legitimately on contract here is Hanifin, Anderson, and Tanev. And that, again, just look at the Flames defense. Like, that's why I would not be putting Tanev in it. Anyway, never mind. So I'll stop talking about it, but still.
Well, let's okay. What do you think Zadorov is going to get? I think that he will probably be around 3.2 for maybe 1 or 2 years.
I'm just pulling something up because I believe his ask was a lot higher than that.
Well, I mean, it depends on, that Brad Treliving is going to be frugal within this. He has not been a part of this organization. He's been around the NHL, yes, and he is an NHLer, but it's one of those show me deals, being like, okay, well, how do you work within our system? I think that we can all agree that he is a Daryl Sutter player, and he has Arbitration, which probably maybe goes a bit against what he really wants out of it. He probably wants a 4 to 5 year deal at maybe 4.5. But I think that with the arbitration, it'll be around 3.2, 3.3 for a year.
I think you'll get to 3. I think 3.2, 3.3 will be. I agree with you. I think that'll be likely it, but I think he asked in the 4s.
His last contract was 3.2.
Yep. So where do you think the arbitrator is going to be standing on that if it goes to ARB? Which I think it will.
I don't think it goes to ARB. I think they end up signing him longer term around $3 million.
Yeah, I think it's 3.6. I think it might be closer to 4 actually.
I don't know if I would. Not something that I would be thrilled upon. That's for sure. I think he's a 3.3, as of right now, he's only 26. I know that's, if you really want to look at it, I think he still has a bit more to prove within the NHL as far as being a bit of a better defensive defenseman, because he is a decent one that I think would benefit Calgary a lot. But to me, it's like, depending on the term, I would lock him up for 3.2, 3.3. If we could do a long-term deal, considering his age, and he doesn't have much of a injury history, which is good.
Yeah, I don't think this. I think this will get done. But I still, you look at that, just tangent again, but you look at that Flames defense, I still think they need a little bit more work. I mean, okay, we'll assume Michael Stone's back. But even with your Connor Mackeys and your Juuso Valimakis, I mean, you're hoping, of course, that they're in development, but I still feel they need one more veteran D back there, other than Michael Stone.
Yeah, and okay, say barring a trade with, because I think Sean Monahan is on his way out, and potentially for a defenseman, in my mind. You could definitely see that being a good trade if you're doing a Monahan for a top 3, or I guess the top 2 pairing defenseman, which would help bolster that lineup. Especially, they've talked about losing Giordano and how it's going to be, instead of one player, you're not going to replace him by one player. It's going to be by committee. And I would be very surprised if Treliving doesn't make a move with a trade, because who else is out there right now for UFAs that they could sign and maybe get a player at a cheap price point that'll be a good, solid defensive signing overall.
There's not much left, honestly.
There's
The guy that I was eyeing for the Canucks before they got OEL, and the guy that I thought would be a good fit for the Flames was Ryan Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now gone. He's gone to Colorado. But I don't know if there is anyone out there right now that would make sense for the Flames, because they need it to be a right side guy, someone who can play the right side. Because I think your left is set with, unless you're moving Zadorov over to the right side, your left side is set with Hanifin, Zadorov, and then choose one of Valimaki or Mackey.
Yep.
And then the right side, you've got Anderson and Tanev, and then Andy Welinski. And I'm pretty sure they're going to want to find a way to upgrade on Andy Welinski.
Well, you do have a Matt Niskanen. I don't think he retired, did he?
I think he did.
Yeah.
There is Eric Gustafsson.
Yep. Sammy Vatanen, Jordy Ben, Braden Colburn,
Stephen Johns.
Yeah, even a Jack Johnson if you want to go down that road, which I don't think you do.
When I look at it, yeah, you got Vatanen, Stone, Jason Demers, Eric Goodbranson.
Gross.
Those are your guys. Those are the ones that are the left that are, because then you got Nate Prosser and Ben Thomas. Prosser's 35, like he's probably done. Ben Thomas is the AHL guy. I think it'd be great for him to come back to Calgary. He was a hitman, but that's more of a depth piece. That is someone who you can bring up when injuries happen. Not someone that you want to be plugging in your top six every day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm picking out of that, I'm picking Michael Stone.
Yeah, and
you know what you're getting.
Yeah,
you know what you're getting from him. He likes the city. He's already here, so
he's probably working out with the team.
Yeah.
Who
do I think if it's who I think they go after based on he's a Daryl Sutter guy, it's Eric Goodbranson.
I think he's coming. I think that's another possibility.
God, he's got a big ass fucking defensive core there with Zadorov and oh man, it'd be ridiculous. And I mean, Yusuf Valimaki, he's a big dude too. Yeah, well, I guess he's 6'2". He's not that big, but he plays decently big. You have Chris Tanev, who's a heart and solar, and he's a bit of a grittier guy. Hanifin's a big guy. I don't know. It's a lot of slow feet with Zadorov and Goodbranson. So I really hope they don't go down that road. If they do get Goodbranson league minimum, and he's a 6'7" pairing defenseman. I know that won't be the case considering we're looking at Daryl Sutter, but man, I would cringe a little bit if Goodbranson was a Flame.
Yeah, it's certainly. I think in terms, it's interesting, and I mean, we've been expecting this earth-shattering shakeup in Calgary, and it hasn't happened yet. But I mean, at some point, there has to be a move. But
in a flat cap, it's hard, right?
And I think everyone is waiting. What happens to Eichel? I think that seems to be the priority for everybody. Until that happens, unfortunately that we don't have that GM in the NHL that will dig under the roots to find something else. Yet, I think everybody is waiting for the big Eichel, and then we'll see.
Well, I think anyone that could have been dug under to find is gone now. Like you look at the Connor Garland was someone I think teams were hoping to get, but Arizona moved him in the OEL deal.
Yeah.
You look at what Philadelphia did. They've completely restructured their defense and team a little bit there. Vegas made a big move with Nashville. You look at Winnipeg making a couple moves to bring in Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. Like there have been those type of deals done. It's just we're in a holding pattern because as you said, everyone's waiting for Eichel, and is there anyone else that's legitimately out there available that you can go out and get without giving up the opportunity cost of Eichel?
I mean, there were reports on Twitter that Montreal is going after Alex Galchenyuk. That's how exciting things are right now.
They're gonna bring Galchenyuk home.
Yeah.
Oh
He's coming home. He's coming home.
You know, there would be a bit of a gamble out of Arizona that I think I would take the risk on is Christian Dvorak. I think that he's a good young player that could help you down the middle, and his cap hit isn't too bad. It's 4.45 for the next 4 years.
What's Kessel's situation?
Kessel's just happy.
I think they want him out. I think they want to see if they can get something for him.
Is he a no move? I could look, but you were just on there, so I'm just curious.
He has submit a 8-player trade list.
Yeah, he's got 1 more year left. I think they do want to move him. I think he's more of a trade deadline acquisition for teams.
And most likely retain salary.
$6.8 million, retain salary on it. Because how much were they've got 2. They've retained salary on Kemper and Ekman Larson. So I don't think they would want to retain salary yet, because it could hurt them in the long haul and trying to make a deal elsewhere. Because you can only retain salary on three players, I believe. But yeah, Dvorak is someone that's out there. But again, I think the opportunity cost on acquiring him would be not potentially being in on Eichel.
No.
And he's more of a 2C than anything else at this point.
Absolutely. I'm just talking about a potential trade with the team, not someone who's going to be, or a team's going to be waiting on Eichel for being like, okay, well, who's the next best bet there? Okay, Christian Dvorak.
Yeah.
Well, you can literally look at basically anyone on Arizona, other than Chitrin, and they're available apparently. So that could be Clayton Keller. That could be Nick Schmaltz. And that if I'm Brad Treliving, Nick Schmaltz is the guy that I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I agree. Keller at 7.15. Oh, for the next 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in that Kachuk. He was in that Kachuk-Ulevy draft. There was a lot of people wanting Calgary to take Clayton Keller. I remember him being people being very high on him. I'm still high on him. I think he's got some quickness. He's got some Johnny in him, but I don't know. I don't know if he's a fit right now in Calgary. I don't know if he's a fit right now in Vancouver at this particular point. But I mean, I think
Keller's a left shot. So if you're going to go after someone like that, if you're the Flames, you want them to be a right shot to help balance out that top 6. That's why it's Nick Schmaltz for me. If the Flames are looking for someone other than Eichel to make a big splash going forwards with, to me, it's Nick Schmaltz on Arizona that makes the most sense.
I agree. Let's just quickly move. The one thing we didn't touch on here is the arbitration of Jason Dickinson as well, new Vancouver Canuck. He keeps getting under this radar. This is becoming one of the more under the radar acquisitions. If anything has been in Canuck line, can be under the radar. This Dickinson trade is becoming that. But he has his arbs hearing set up. Are we thinking that gets done before?
Well, his arbitration is the 23rd, I believe. It's in that date range. So they've got a couple weeks to try and get a Hughes or a PD deal done. Hughes can't be offer sheeted. So I think he's probably the last one to get done. because there's no. As long as you have him in before camp, you're good. And then I think Dickinson's probably going to get in that in a 2.5 range. Looking at an Athletic article from Johansen Dollywall here, and they've got Zach Sanford, Ivan Barbashev, Teddy Bluger, Oscar Sundqvist, Adam Lauer, and Philip Deneau's last contract as comparables. And where he fits along there, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 2.5, between 2.5 for 2-3 years. If you get it done.
That's I think one of the sneaky best deals that Jim Benning has done as GM. I am in love with this player. He is everything that you want. He's a heart and souler, great defensive forward, let alone a center. And God, getting him at that cap hit, holy! And for lock him up as long as you can. Yeah, obviously maybe not as long as you can, but he's a great penalty killer, and he's only 26. So yeah, lock him up until he's 31 at that cap hit. Probably not what he wants. He probably wants a little bit more, but even if you're paying a little bit more, man, I think that you can't really go wrong with paying him maybe 3.5 for the next 5 years. I believe he is that good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will want to sign him. The date is August 20th, by the way. But yeah, I think they'll get this done. It seems to me that most of these situations are getting done. I mean, Zach Aston-Reese was done. Vince Dunn was done. Pardon the pun. Most of these are getting done. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't anticipate any problems with Dickinson there as well. But
no, I think ideally you want 3 years with him. Looking at where the Canucks cap issues are. Next year you've got Brock Besser and Tyler Mott as and Jack Rathbone as the key players that need new deals. The year after you have Bo and JT Miller along with Niels Hoglander needing new deals. So I don't think you want another player there. So if you can get Dickinson signed for 3 years. And push back his new contract to the same as Tanner Pearson, I think that would work.
Yeah,
because then if he does fit in, and he'll be 29 at the time, and if he does fit in, you can sign him to a two-year deal at basically maybe potentially close to what Pearson was making, and Pearson will be out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, you've still got a bit of you got some room to play there. Just a couple of other things that happened here that we did want to touch on. I mean, all the attention on Darnell Nurse, but Adam Pelech signed a 5.75 contract till 28-29. I think this is a very under the rate. I think Adam Pelech is one of the more underrated. I'm not saying he's in Jacob Slavin's category of underrated, but I think he is one of the more underrated defensemen in the league. And I think that this is a bargain for the Islanders, who have an incredibly strong defense going into next year.
I love this deal. I absolutely love it. Kev, you said it best. He's underrated. His contract will get him to 33, I believe. And at 5.75, man, if you're an Islanders fan, you got to take that and run with it. He is so sneaky good. And his coming up party wasn't even this past year. It was the year before that. He can play. He's more of a defensive defenseman. I do think he has a bit more upside than people think he does. But within the role that he's playing with Barry Trotz, it's well done on Lou Amarillo to get that deal done for as long as he did, and he obviously loves it there on the island. So, and let alone within that, like I said, system of Barry Trotz, he thrives. So, fantastic deal.
It's a bit rich for my taste. I'm going to take a different approach here because anytime you're paying a defenseman over $5 million, I want more production than what Pelech brings. So if he can bump it up and bring that production, then this deal's going to look really good. But as of right now, as Devin has said multiple times, it's a calculated risk here with this contract that he's going to step up and become a little more offensive. Because right now I think it's an overpay. But I like the thought process and I like the risk here. I don't think but as of right now, it's an overpay. But 3 years in, it could look like an absolute bargain. He's a really good number 2 defenseman to Ryan Pelech, and just wait. I can't wait to see what Ryan Pelech gets on his next deal because he's going to be 27 as a UFA. He's a right shot guy. He's gonna. I'm really interested to see how much of Johnny Boychuk's cap is he going to take next year.
Well, not only that, we talked about Cody Ceci getting 3 points, whatever. Scott Mayfield only makes 1.4.
Yeah, but Mayfield. Oh man, you talk about a big brute defenseman right there. He's up there for sure. And Noah Dobson, he's kind of Noah's kind of getting up there with his like pushing past him in the rankings of defensemen on that right side. But getting him at that or what he's making right now, Scott Mayfield is a bargain, I think, as well.
Yeah, Mayfield's one of those like just good 4 or 5 D-men. And yeah, he probably on the open market he gets over 2.5, maybe close to 3. Maybe he's comparable to what Zadorov gets. But yeah, at 1.45, he's good. He's at a decent clip, and it's not like he's old either. He's still 28.
Yeah,
like he'll be 30 at the time his contract's up. He's still going to get a decent deal after that because they've got him locked up for another 2 years.
Yeah, you can see Lou is building something there on the island for sure.
The left side needs work though. They've got they've got Pelech, but other than that, they've got Andy Green who's 38, and then the other Sebastian Aho. But yeah, it's gonna. They've got a good right side, and maybe they're doing the opposite of what. In terms of handedness, what was made Tampa Bay successful on the blue line and having such a strong one side of the blue line.
One of the other issues on the island is just it will be interesting. I'm interested in the health of Anders Lee, if he's back next year or not. That's, I guess, will be a question too.
Talk about a deal that is likely not going to age well, unfortunately.
Nope.
I like him, but $7 million for another 5 years, and he's 31.
Yeah,
and he has a no trade clause to 15 teams that he doesn't want to be traded to.
Yeah. The other signing this week that I think got some attention is Thomas Tata joins the New Jersey Devils, so they get some Tata sauce on their devil sauce. I think he just probably needs to get out of Montreal. I mean. Good opportunity in New Jersey. I mean, it's a signing, but I don't think it's earth-shattering. But it's a sneaky signing.
It's a good signing. They've got 2 good centers that he can play with, whether it's Hischier or Hughes. And yeah, I like it. I think it's a great signing for what they're sort of in a. They're sort of in the middle. They're not necessarily rebuilding, but they're trying to put the pieces around. Those 2 centers to give them players to play with, so that they're not wasting away with just crap.
New Jersey's a sneaky good team. I think that they're going to be flying under the radar for people, and that they will surprise the NHL with how good they are. Ryan Graves being picked up, Dougie Hamilton, Ty Smith on the back end there. And then, getting Thomas Tatar I think a good deal for both sides, both the team and the player. He's going to be getting 4.5 for the next 2 years. And Sean's right. He does have two good centers that will be able to find him. And obviously it didn't work out in Montreal. And I'm kind of curious why. Did we find out why that he didn't play in the playoffs?
Just wasn't who they wanted to play. I think that's all it was.
Which is ridiculous considering his numbers for the past few years. Last year he was 30 points, 10 goals, 20 assists in 50 games. The year before that, 68 games played, and he had 61 points. So obviously something happened within that locker room, within him and the coach. I don't know, but I think it's a massive win for the New Jersey Devils, who, like I said, I think are going to be sneaky good within that division. I know they're in it tough with being in the Metro, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made a push there.
He feels a bit inconsistent at times, but I mean, when he's on, he certainly can score.
I think what New Jersey is going to be doing with those young players and the system they're going to play a little more speed based and wide open and all that. I think that fits his game better than what Ducharme was doing with the Habs, especially in the playoffs, where it was more of a shutdown, defensive first system. And that's why he was sat more. That's why he was sat instead of playing one of your better offensive players, because he still is. Like you look at his career. Last year was the only year, if I'm looking at this, where he wasn't like he's been all as consistent a 20 goal scorer as you can get in the NHL. And that's a sneaky good ad for New Jersey.
And just on New Jersey's point as well, they just signed Igor Sarangovich, who was playing in their top six, fifth round pick out of 2018 draft year, and sounds like he's going to be a good player as well. So they do have these young players up and coming that are going to be great. Not to mention Luke Hughes, who's just drafted this past year, going to be playing with his brother. I think that's going to be a sneaky good pick. He won't be playing this year because I believe he's going back to Michigan to play on that massively heavy team that will push for a national championship. So that New Jersey is going to be sneaky good for. They have a good up and coming nucleus. It's just whether or not you can rely on a Mackenzie Blackwood to take another step forward. Granted, he is only 24, and the way that he has played is pretty damn good. So I think that might be a bit of a change of the guard when Pittsburgh is said and done on their downward trajectory as New Jersey's on their upward.
Yeah. Another sneaky signing, this was in the agenda, but I did remember this. Marcus Johansen signing with the Kraken. I mean, it's not they still need some offense, but he is a versatile guy that I think will help.
He's going to fit in with the system. I think they're going to try and want to deploy. They're going to be a offense by committee based off of what they look like right now. They're going to be the Wolf Pack levels will be high in Seattle, and I think he'll help that.
Yeah, I could see him on that second line. I project Jared McCann to be their second line center. Their first line center is going to be Yanni Gordon. He can go up and down within that lineup easily enough, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're going to have Gordon until December, anyways. So it's adding Johansson is going to add some good depth there.
Yeah. Any other? Where are we at here? Let's see.
Let's go back to Darnell Nurse, and I think there's a good discussion here with where he sits in sort of the hierarchy for Hockey Canada going into the Olympics potentially next year. And is he a legit option for them on that left side for the blue line?
Kevin, you start.
So let's see. Let's look at the list here. Theodore would be probably most people's number one left side D. I'm just going to Morgan Riley is probably another option.
Thomas Chabot, my boy.
Boy Chabot. I would say, yeah. I think he has a pretty good chance to be on the team. I guess it really depends on how they want to play it. I mean, it doesn't. There's not a lot of good left side Canadian defense options out there that I mean, most people will put Theodore as number one, but and then you got Morgan Riley,
Cale Makar.
Makar
Right
would be
side.
your right side, though. I mean, I think a guy that I think might be looked at just in terms of under the radar. I wouldn't be surprised if Owen Power is going to get some consideration, considering that they brought him in for the World Championships. That wouldn't surprise me. I say yes. I think he should be on the radar at least.
Yeah, the way I look at it is your number one defenseman is going to be Morgan Riley with a bullet. There's nothing against anyone else, but he is legit the best all-around defenseman on the left side in Canada right now. Shea Theodore is in the mix. Chabot is in the mix. Nurse is in the mix. Samuel Girard is someone that you don't discount. Devin Taves as well. But after that, you've got Giordano. No, he's old. I don't think they bring him. Morrissey's not quite there. Duncan Keith's too old. If they want someone who's more of if they're looking at someone who might be a safe defensive defenseman, Travis Sanheim potentially, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. But for me, the four that stand out to me for left side Canadian defensemen are Riley, Chabot, Nurse, and Theodore.
You're just talking about basically the entire Colorado Avalanche blue line with Taves, Makar, and Girard, along with Taves. All right, I said Taves already. Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at a couple lists here that say Bowen Byram's up there too. I mean, he still has a lot to prove within that. So, but yeah, it's he has to be in the as far as Nurse goes, he has to be in the conversation. If he's not, then I think you're missing out on a really, really solid piece that, depending on whether or not what type of team do you want to have? Do you want to have a kind of more defensively sound team like Mike Babcock was deploying at the last Olympics, or are you looking for something a little bit more high flying and a little bit more fun to watch? But I think either way, he should be on the team in my mind, whether or not that's a depth defenseman that you could put in the lineup or have him on your starting lineup.
I mean, you could move Makar to the left side if you wanted to. I mean, your right side, you've got Hamilton, Weber, but Weber will be out.
No.
Yeah, but Hamilton, Doughty, Pietrangelo. Yeah,
the right side's Makar. For me, would be Makar, Hamilton, Pietrangelo, Doughty, and then Ekblad would be the ones that I'd be making a decision on. You want to see where Ekblad is coming off his injury. If he's healthy, I think he's a top 6 defenseman on that team.
I agree. I actually would have him as a top 4. I don't think people know how good he is.
And then you've got Dougie Hamilton and Cale Makar as well. And if you got Hamilton and McCarr and Ekblad as your potentially your three, and which is crazy because you're leaving off Pietrangelo and Doughty, that's a very aggressive right side. So maybe you do want to go a little more conservative and defensive. And again, that's where Darnell Nurse comes in. Like he can play both. He can play both ways. I think he's a better sort of just. He's better when he's not the puck mover on the pair. I think he's better in that role. And if without those are your right shot options to play with, that's what he would play.
Yeah, I mean, there will be some interest. The questions on with Canada is, I mean, the questions and there's lots of questions with Canada. The question is which forwards are you leaving out, because there is a ton of talent there, but the big questions to me for Canada is goal. I mean, I guess you're probably going Price, and if Fleury is coming back, it's Price or Fleury, and you're deciding number one. But who is the number three? I think is very interesting.
Right.
And that defense, the left to me, even with Morgan Riley there, I look at some other countries' defense, and that is one area. Like when you early handicap of the Olympics, that's where I would be concerned for Canada.
You do have Carter Hart, depending on where he's going to be, if he's going to be able to get back to his form of his rookie year. Jordan Biddington, little weary on that. You also have Mackenzie Blackwood as well as a potential a number three goalie as well. So yeah, I mean, after Carey Price, man, I don't know. I guess you do have Fleury in there, depending on where his game is at as well. I'm actually very curious on how he's going to look in Chicago. I think he'll be okay, but there's still a question how he's going to adapt within that locker room, and how much fire is under his ass for not the first time, but the second time a team has kind of let him go basically for nothing.
Yeah. I know Sean is not going to be happy on this, but I think another one that will be on the radar for the defense is Adam Pelech. I know that there are a lot of people high on Adam Pelech, so I wouldn't be surprised.
I just look at that and I look at who else is available. He's a left shot guy. I take all the players I listed before him. I mentioned I take more than him, other than maybe Travis Sanheim that I listed. He'd be in that same spot as Travis Sanheim, as someone who, if they're looking for more of a stay-at-home safe defenseman, that's where he would fit.
Yeah, and who's healthy, barring any injury.
Yes,
and I see Blackwood as the number three guy. I would have Blackwood as my number three right now, but I think that's going to be where the battle is.
I think I think two and three are still wide open. I don't think Canada would be opposed to leaving Fleury off the roster and going with a couple younger guys if they're playing better than him.
Yeah,
it all comes down to who's playing better.
I could see Fleury being even the third pick. They are very with Team Canada, and they're very loyal to the people and the players who have played for them in the past, and Fleury has been one of them.
Yep. Yeah. That's why I think they're going to look at Owen Power, and I'm just I
understand where you're coming from, Kev, but look at who was on that World Championship team this year. Like it was a completely different type of team, and I think if you're talking about World Championships, I think you do that. I do not see them looking at an Owen Power and taking him over all these left side defensemen. Yeah,
I'm not saying that they're gonna. Let me clarify. I think he will be. I think they will look at him and like if there was a camp, he would come to camp. But he wouldn't make the team. But I think that they would look at him as a potential for whenever the next what the hell is the next Olympics? 24, 25, 6?
26.
26. I think, so they would probably bring him in, have a look at him, get him sort of set for 26.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Why not?
If this was like the women's team, or if the national team was like separate from the NHL and all that, I would agree. I don't know if Hockey Canada is looking that far ahead with the men's national team.
Yeah, and the other big question is if Canada goes. The other big question, if the NHL goes, and the other big question, I think, and it is a legitimate question, is what players will or will not go. I mean, we will still be dealing with COVID. I don't think it's going to be the pandemic that we are particularly in now, but I think some people are going to be very concerned about travel. So we'll see. I think that'll be the other big question in all of this.
100%.
I think there will be a handful of players throughout a few countries, a few national teams that will be surprises that aren't on it, and it's because they don't want to go.
Yep. That will make that interesting in and of itself. And by the way, can we just congratulate all of the Canadian athletes for an outstanding Olympics? Congratulations to the soccer team, the women's soccer team. Congratulations to no, people, you cannot win a medal at 50 kilometers walking. Sit down. You cannot. No, you can't.
Listen, they can speed walk 1 mile in just over 4 minutes.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell you think you could keep up with that. For 4 hours, for 3.5 to 4 hours? I don't fucking think so. Sit down.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Thank you, Twitter athletes.
I watched that entire race, and that was fun. I'm not gonna lie. It is actually fun to watch that because they are athletes, and it's actually really too bad that they are that is the last one. They're not bringing it back. And good on Evan Dunphy for getting bronze out of that.
After what he went through last Olympics, where he got bumped by the Japanese racer, and then he got upgraded to the bronze and then demoted after some protests and everything, and all the emotions he had to go through for him to get that bronze. Because Heidi and I were watching that race as well, and I was wondering where he was and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's got bronze, and I was so happy for him because of that. The emotions he went through last Olympics with all that, and he was able to get the redemption and get that Olympic medal is fantastic, and it's one of those stories that makes the Olympics. Yeah,
it was. After all of that, what happened? I mean, it turned out to be a really great Olympics for Canada. I mean, we're tangenting again, but I was so happy for the Canadian soccer team, the team. I'm so happy for Christine Sinclair. I'm happy for Quinn. I'm happy for Stephanie Lab. I wanted to call her Sylvia Lab, but her name is Stephanie Lab. I was so happy for them.
And Damian Warner, you're talking about the Olympics and the ultimate Olympic event is the heptathlon and the decathlon, where you're doing multiple events, and the Olympic champion is Canadian in the decathlon. Damian Warner is an absolute legend. He was one of four decathletes in the history to hit the 9,000 point mark, which is like, I think someone put it out there, it's like Gretzky scoring 200 points in a season. That's how insane what Damian Warner did. Yeah. And I am so happy. And I put out a tweet saying, if you win the heptathlon or the decathlon, you deserve to carry the flag. And that's who Canada had. But my emotional one was Stephanie Labbé, and just her performance in the shootout for the women's soccer was just stuff of legends. It was just how calm she was. The smile she had on her face during it was just awesome. And I'm so happy that for all the Canadian athletes, I got to give a standing ovation at the Stamps game last night to one of the women rowers who came back with a gold medal.
Yeah,
and just it's great because there was so much sort of downtrodden like feelings towards the Olympics going into them this year because of everything. But these are athletes who put so much time and effort into it. It is legit their full-time job for most of them. And if not, it's a 3/4 job, and their time, emotion, they deserve to be as talked about as much as we talk about NHL and all the pro sports.
Yeah. And also Andre DeGrasse as well. I mean, he's been through a lot with the sprinting program too. It was good to see him get another medal as well. And I know everyone wants, because you can use his name, and then you can finally have a DeGrasse junior high. Oh, but whatever. And Penny Oleksiak. How can we forget Penny Oleksiak?
7 Olympic medals for the most for a Canadian Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
And most for a summer Olympic athlete. And
Yeah, with having Alex Kopach here and talking with him and asking him, picking his brain on what his body goes through, what he's gone through mentally as well. It is absolutely insane how much strain and stress he has within that, and that goes to show with every single athlete that the downfall after the Olympics, his body completely fell apart. And so the good majority of these athletes are going to follow through and follow that as well. And so, just hope that we can support them even after this, mentally and physically, with anything that they need. It is huge as well. So don't forget about that aspect as well.
Do we want to talk about Crosby?
Happy birthday to the kid.
Happy birthday.
The kid is 34 years old.
I'm sick of all this Crosby talk. Always
More
great.
Austin
Oh,
Matthews
we know. God. I'm just kidding. No, happy birthday to him. I don't doubt he'll be playing for another 5, maybe even 6, 7 years, realistically, depending on his concussion and health overall.
He's not on the Mount Rushmore, but I think he's the 5th greatest player to ever play this game. Male to ever play this game.
Yep.
Asking Lou, Howe, or as your Rushmore.
Yeah, you still, to me, though, it's so hard to not take any of those. You cannot take any of those 4 out.
Yeah.
And anybody that would make a claim on any of the 4 didn't see him. That's just.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that one.
No, we've had this talk before. As much as we want to have him on there because of how great of a player he is and always will be. No, there has been better.
Yeah, he's better than Messier though. I will say that. Like I will take Crosby over Messier. I will make that unpopular opinion.
Who's making the other side of that? Of course, he's better than Messier.
Oh, I think there'd be some people that will disagree with you on that.
Well, yeah, that's because they're in Edmonton and they're coming from Oilers bias.
Yeah.
And instead of not adding me, at me, please. Let me know.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. My and then next would be Ovechkin. The Crosby and Ovechkin are in my top 10.
Yep.
And Nicholas Lidstrom. So
I was
there.
about to say, where's Lidstrom? Because he is like outside of Orr, he is legit I would say the second best defenseman to play this game.
Yep. I mean, I would probably go Crosby, Lidstrom, Ovechkin.
And all three of them are I can understand arguments for all a different order in those three, because they're all really, 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 really fucking good.
Yep. All right. Let's leave it. Sorry.
I'll ask this question and kind of maybe leave it on that, and you guys can think about it. Don't answer. I don't want you to answer. Where is Scott Niedermayer? That's my question.
It's a good question.
I said, don't answer, Kevin.
He's thinking.
I know.
I want to answer.
It could be a discussion for a different time.
There's a whole debate around. There's a very interesting debate about how we rank defensemen, because I think traditionally, we have just granted the permission to Bobby Orr, which is fair, but we've also have permitted Paul Coffey to be on that top of that list because of the amount of points that he scored, and Ray Bork. And I'm not going to dispute that they were great defensemen, but you look at how defense is played now. Is Paul Coffey? There's a legitimate question of where Paul Coffey and Ray Bork sit. In that, and that's what I'm thinking about, because I think that I would have there's a legitimate argument that Niedermayer is better than both Bork and Coffey.
I think I didn't even know that was a debate. I have him above them.
Me too.
He was better defensively than both of them combined. And that's not a knock against either of them. That's how good defensively Scott Niedermayer was.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, but there's also that tradition that you just are like, do we pass that? How dare we speak ill of Bork or Coffey? But I think maybe it's just my generation. It's like, you don't speak ill of. And then the other part about this too, when you talk about, sorry, I'm extending this. But Doug, I mean, we are not old enough to saw Doug Harvey live, but Doug Harvey fits in a conversation as well. I mean, and, historically, I would recommend for you young kids out there, look up Larry Robinson and Rod Langway. Like, they did not produce offensive, the production, but man, the way they played D. Anyway, okay, we'll end it here. Some people have got to leave. So how do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Canuck 03 on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at GordHowe09.
Tyler, who has the best hair on this podcast, TNOBLE. Chris is Schneid's, SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey. Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast. YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. We will be back next Sunday, 11 Pacific, 12 Mountain. I'm just going to put a plant in there because there's one topic we will approach. We're going to do some fantasy hockey discussion at some point in this offseason as well. We have to do that.
Yes.
But
Devin just got really excited.
Yes. Anyway, we got to go. Talk to you all soon. Bye for now.